Some use arrows.
Hello! Welcome to the series wrap-up of Watching Thrones. Our night has truly ended. Our night has ended. Our watch has ended. Our night has ended. I'm on vacation as of 1 hour from now. Everything's over. It's Monday for you. It's beach day for me. This is Spencer Gilbert. I'm Roth Cornet. Currently at a barbecue. I'm Roth Cornet, currently up a tree. Lon Harris, currently...
I'm probably still here.
Yeah, he's probably still here. And Michelle Boyd, we missed you.
Thanks, guys. Hi. I'm going west of Westeros after this.
Oh, good. You and Arya.
No spin-offs. Forget it.
Our watch will continue for just a little bit as we wrap up this series. But first and foremost, Michelle was not with us on Sunday night, very sadly. So I would love to hear, what was your take on the finale?
I mean, my take was I'm really sad that I didn't get to see Spencer's complete and utter meltdown over King Bran.
I was saying before the show, we were all watching in, I think we said it last week too, we were all watching in respectful silence until Bran became the king of Westeros, and then there was just a hell of a
mayhem.
We just could have seen like birds in the trees next to the office leave. It got bad.
Oh, yeah.
Things
So
got
I
rowdy
am
after that.
sad. I am very sad that I did miss that. I mean, I thought it was pretty good as finales go. I mean, honestly, obviously, there's a lot that you can nitpick. There's a lot that I hated. But overall, I'm happy with where the characters ended up. I'm okay with King Bran. It's fine. I don't care anymore.
It's fine.
The more I think about it, the less I like it.
It's fine. There's a lot that you could argue with, either from just a story arc point of view, or just how did Grey Worm teleport from one point to another? Sure, but I think as far as where the characters actually ended or where they're headed to, it's fine.
There you have it, folks.
Full quote. Game of Thrones, the biggest series in the history of ever.
It's
Not really.
fine.
It actually isn't. But
It's pretty big. What's a
It's
bigger
fine.
series?
lots, like CSI. I mean, in
MASH.
terms of
Longer.
viewership.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you mean like epic scale.
Oh, epic scale. No,
yeah.
fair enough. Yeah, but even if you mean just like viewership.
Yeah, like Gunsmoke.
I just mean like a true water
murders it.
cooler show.
Agreed.
That we
This
have.
is it. This is the last one. This is the end of it. It's the end of an era,
They're
you
done
guys.
with television.
They're
Yeah,
done
that's
with
it. I'm
There's
done.
no more TV. It is over.
Umbrella
No,
Academy's pretty good.
To be fair, like, we invested 9 years
Yeah.
in this show. Longer if you've been reading the books from the beginning, which I have not. I did not read Game of Thrones until the show came out. But 9 years, it's a long time. It's a long time to be invested in character arcs. It's a long time to be invested in whether or not magic deserves to be in this world. So, it's you can get a lot of criticism of, oh God, it's just dragons. What the hell do you even care? But it's like, no, the show made us care.
Yeah, I've cared, and I love this series. I mean, this is really throughout the watching of it over the years. This has been one of my favorite series to watch and to take part of. The community has been one of my favorite parts.
Sure, it's been a great ride, and we're pre-taping this. It's still pretty raw after the finale.
It's fresh.
So I've been still chewing on this, and it's like, I don't know. You sit down for a meal, okay? The appetizer, amazing. You can't wait for more. The main course, delicious, perfectly prepared. Dessert is
all falls
is
to
a piece
shit.
of crap compacted in the shape of a chocolate cake. You take a bite, you're only going to remember the piece of shit you ate at the end, and not the great meal, no matter how satisfied you were at the beginning.
That is a vivid image,
Thank you.
which I will agree
disagree with
Yeah.
it. I do disagree.
You're
This-
not remembering
this is-
eating shit.
That's
you know
going to be
what?
the most vivid memory of your
on.
experience.
Here's my going along with that analogy. I decided to hold my nose during dessert and not actually fully taste it because I knew what was in front of me.
It's not.
So I'm
it's not
choosing to remember the lovely meal, the adaptation that happened before the appetizer and the meal. I loved what they did in early seasons. I really enjoyed quite a lot of the show. I am choosing to try to remember that.
And
Here's
I
what I'll
admire
say.
that, but it's
To go along with the analogy, It's like a gourmet appetizer, a gourmet meal, and then like a dish of thrifty ice cream that you have to eat really quickly. It's not a clump of shit. It's not disgusting. It's just not up to the level that you'd come to expect from the rest of the meal. I think that's more fair.
Is it thrifty ice cream?
Which is still good.
With,
It's still
with,
delicious.
with like crumbled dog poo. By the way,
There's no
that was a
eating
question. That wasn't a statement. That was
I'm
a
getting
question.
us away from cocophilia entirely and just saying, like, look, it would be like if you went to Animal for dinner and then you went to, like, your neighbors for dessert and they'd made shortbread. Like, it's not gross, but it's not like, no, I wish we had stayed out for dinner.
Endings and traumatic experiences make the most lasting impression, I think, in general. That how you break up with someone it contextualizes how you think about the whole relationship. How, again, the meal analogy, how you end it, how you feel at the end contextualizes how the whole thing went. And right now, I'm at my low point, guys.
I don't disagree with that. I just feel like the reaction was so severe. It feels to me, and I'm not trying to discount anybody else's opinion, but it feels very over the top. Like, I think we can all agree there were some issues with this final season, especially this last episode. I agree with everybody that it felt very rushed. My biggest thing with this whole final season, and I'll just throw it out there now, I never really felt like Jon and Dany, they just didn't sell us that they were, like, in love.
No,
I didn't
never.
feel the
Ever.
emotion.
I mean, they met at the beginning of season 7.
Yeah.
Episode 2 or 3 or something in there. That's not enough time.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
It didn't have the same impact even as her and Khal Drogo.
Or
not
him and
even
Ygritte.
close.
Or him and Ygritte. Well, to me,
Ygritte, yeah.
To me, it sort of feels like when Lost tried to do that, like, Saeed ends up with Shannon. Like, that's not his true love. I've watched the show. Like, to me, Ygritte was Jon's true love. The show sold me on that.
Well, they also are married in reality, so the actors clearly had a ton of chemistry.
when they were
This
filming.
was a chemistry thing. To be
But they
fair,
had
I mean, it
chemistry. They ended up
didn't
getting
help
married.
that they only gave Jon basically 2 lines for both
Yeah.
this season
Yes.
and last. And also that, I mean, not to totally disparage Kit Harington, but it might have helped if he'd had an expression other than trying to figure out a crossword puzzle.
Let me ask you a
The whole
question,
time.
Michelle.
Please.
And at a table, I don't remember, but I don't think either Jon and Ygritte or Khal Drogo and Daenerys ever said the words "I love you" to each other. They never said that.
Definitely not Jon and Ygritte. Never
Right.
said I love
And
you.
definitely not Danny and
They
Drogo.
said
I feel like
love of my love.
Right. They had like
Sun and
my
stars,
life,
Sun
my
and
sun and
stars.
stars, my life.
metaphorical ways of
Right.
expressing.
I am yours and you are
You're
mine.
mine.
There's
Yeah.
no word
Jon
for
and
love in
Ygritte.
Dothraki.
Right.
It probably
That's
is, but
almost
it's all
better.
consonants.
That's the thing. Is
But that's
that
my
those
point.
Are, yeah, they had. Well,
I think
I'm
that's my
saying
point.
better dialogue from the books than the writers gave them.
Well, I'm saying that there was like watching the development of that relationship. It was inherent in their actions, how they felt about each other. Like when she shot him in the leg instead of the heart, for example, that is an act of love. And
That's how I express love.
there's more power in that than Tyrion and Jon having a conversation about how Jon loves Daenerys.
Yeah, I think it's probably all of these factors together. And to me, that's like a very valid criticism of this final season and that last episode. Like that moment, it looks great. They're performing it well when Jon actually kills Daddy. I like that whole sequence, but it would have had a lot more emotional impact if I really felt like these two people were in love. But to me, that's a valid criticism. But it doesn't mean the last episode or the last season was like a total wash,
No,
like eating
but
poo. Like I just feel like it's a problem.
I didn't bring up
I brought
the
up the
poo.
shit. So you're putting so
is
much
all your fault,
effort on
Spencer.
that central relationship that like I don't mind skipping over things like how someone got from A to B really quickly. Like in my head, I can say they rode faster, and I don't think I needed to see Littlefinger like how he jetpacked around. Like,
No. That's
But how Jon and Dany like really fell in love and how they really feel about each other. That's a huge part of your show to
Yeah.
just kind of be like, well, they met and they made doe eyes at each other and now they're inseparable. Like,
Because
okay.
then when he stops her in the heart, the cost of that, like if he had to kill Ygritte ultimately, he didn't, but that you would have been heartbroken, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Ollie took
Yeah,
care of
that was
that.
great.
And even then, you were still heartbroken.
But Ollie stabbing Jon broke my heart.
Yeah, no,
Fully.
I'm not disagreeing
Yeah,
with you. No, I think it's more just like the tone of the reaction has not been. this was a flawed final season. It's been like Benioff and Weiss murdered my family.
Well, it's still fresh. Though.
It's still fresh. Like,
I don't want to spoil what you're
And I
going
disagree
home
with
to,
Yeah.
Lon, but they did murder your family.
Was it Benioff or Weiss?
You'll never know.
So, Michelle,
you can't tell
you
them
were saying
apart.
something.
This is even worse than that Confederate show.
Oh God, wait till they take on Star Wars. I just think, I'm going to echo what a lot of people have said, just that the last 2 seasons have felt very shoehorned. And it's been a lot of tell, not show. And it's been a lot of the showrunners just sort of being like, you're going to take what we spoon feed you and don't think about anything else. Don't even think about the stuff that we've set up for the last 5 years. Just take what we're giving you now. And as intelligently as we've been asked to watch this show since the beginning, that change in tone was very jarring for people, myself included. And I just for me personally, part of the reason that I was fine with this finale is that I emotionally checked out after the long night. I hated that episode so incredibly much, and I understood that that was the episode where like magic went out the window, plot armor became 5 feet thick, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is the show we're getting now. All right, cool. I'm gonna stop investing what I've been investing for the last 9 years and just kind of accept the show for what they're giving me now and try to enjoy what parts of it I can.
Yeah, I know it sounds stupid, but this season it became like a television show, like any other TV show you would watch, where it was following the rules of television more so than like the rules of its own world that I feel like had been established, which was a world where anything can happen and everyone had motivations at cross purposes. And, if something surprised you, you could still go back through and be like, oh, you could have seen that coming if you were paying attention.
No
in
TV show is
retrospect.
going to do King Bran. Like, that's a very outside the box. Like, that's what people are upset about, is it's not a thing that you, like, could have directly seen coming from the previous episodes. Like, the obvious way to go would be Jon becomes king or Dany becomes king.
Or Sansa at this point. I mean,
I guess
I think
that's a valid point, Lon, but I think in that case, it's like, well, we need to give them one last surprise. They wouldn't see that coming because there's no reason why anyone would.
Well, then let me ask you, do you
agree
think
with
this
that.
is George's ending? Do you think Bran becomes king in the books and Sansa becomes queen in the north and Jon gets exiled to the wall?
I kind of
Maybe.
at this point, like, they seem to have been following a guideline or the bullet points that he had laid out for them for the completion of this season. And we've talked before about how they seemed, with the characters that they had more liberty with, to do a little bit better with. So it's unclear, and I hope they're different, because at this point it'd be nice to find a different path, or I think the path will certainly be different. Bran's very different in the books.
And
Go ahead.
Sorry. I'm sure other people are saying this as we speak, but I'm thinking there's an evil Bran theory out there that
sure.
might be convincing, because, and I don't know how deep in the weeds we want to get, but
No, I would love to talk evil Bran, because there's a whole lot to unpack just from his line of, why do you think I came all this way?
It's pretty manipulative.
Of like, did you intend for all of this to happen?
Yeah.
Did you want Hodor to die and genocide to happen so you could be on the throne because it's the right thing to do?
Then how are you really different than any other tyrant who's willing to
He's not.
sacrifice
He's not.
thousands?
Right.
He's not.
Because
I mean, that would be-
ultimately, I'm the best leader.
Yeah.
At first
right?
blush, it's like I was so disappointed that the Jon's parentage never came into play.
Not at all.
Except to drive a wedge between him and Dany.
Exactly.
And it's like one more thing to push Dany over the edge. The only person who stands to gain from that is the person who told him and
Yeah.
who knew how things would play out would be Bran.
Right.
So is the only reason Jon's parentage is of any importance is to clear the way for Bran to roll on into the throne.
I mean, and that it does recontextualize, and particularly the way the show has depicted it, which it largely would be different in the books, but the way the show has depicted it, they've been very unclear about what Bran's powers are or are not. Mm-hmm. So, but they have certainly indicated that he's doing a little Doctor Stranging,
Sure.
Heavily indicated that. So given all of that, and given that he is the one that provided this information and thought it was very important to do so, given that they had him skulking about and just kind of like weirdly spying on people, and given that he said, "Why do you think I came all this way?" which was clearly a bigger statement and metaphor for his arc, it's like, oh, Bran manipulated everything to this point because he felt, and maybe is or is not, the best leader. Frankly, the idea that somebody had done all of that and sacrificed all those people because they really did have a plan that was best for society, what you are faced with as the viewer is the carnage that it sometimes takes to create that it always takes to create revolutionary change would be interesting. But they also really didn't make that clear.
I don't think any of this
that's
is clear,
the
but
point.
I do think this idea is baked in some ways into the show. I've seen a lot of people raise this idea, but also be like, but there's no way the show meant for us to take this interpretation. It definitely just meant Bran is definitely good and he's going to be a good king. I don't necessarily think so. I think the show is definitely leading there's a bunch of stuff going on, but I think the show's definitely leading us down here's why Tyrion thinks this is the right move. And even they had that setup scene with Tyrion before the Battle of Winterfell, like pulling up a chair, like, "Hey, Bran, let's talk," but we don't get to see what their conversation is.
That's where they hatched the evil plan.
Right. And so I do think the show is kind of layering it in there. I actually think it makes total sense the way that Tyrion presents it, that it makes sense to Tyrion. I think the thread that the show didn't necessarily do a great job of tying up is why would the other lords of Westeros
anyone from the Iron Islands or Dorne or really anywhere?
And I think if you were at the Battle of Winterfell and you saw Bran being there part of the preparations and he laid out the plan that ended up winning, maybe that would convince you like this guy does have ancient mystic wisdom and we should trust him. But if you weren't there, it would be like, no, who's this? I don't know who this kid is. You just needed more contextualization around that.
It just bothers me because, I mean, really all you saw was Bran just pushing the dominoes over. And, just having Jon's parentage be such a thing that Jon needs to know about, because then apparently he knows how all the rest of this is going to fall over and play out, which involves... Well, I was gonna say like decimation of the Dothraki and the Unsullied, but there's more of them than ever in the finale. So
Somewhere.
Screw it. So they reproduce asexually. It's fine. And it's just, and it's sort of like killing all of King's Landing, and it's like all of that comes from Bran's insistence that the truth be out there, and because of his like Fox and Mulder persona, it's just. Like, now he gets to be king.
Yeah.
And that's a little weird for me. And I'm okay with, like I said, I am okay with how it ended. I'm okay with Wikipedia being king. Fine. But, like, how we got there
actually
is weird.
Question for us.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about the show, like as it relates to the morality of Bran as king, IGN, crediting them, came up with a very good point, which is that you basically just elected, to your point, not Wikipedia, Google as king. Bran can see, you just created Big Brother. Bran can go anywhere, see anything, spy on all the citizens. He has access to all of this information. Like, are we, I mean, as we know, that is the world we currently live in. But, I mean, like, there is a real moral question there about having someone with that ability as the leader. Now, if we're to say that this person is so beneficent that it's fine because they're only going to be working for the greater good, but that's still a moral quagmire.
It's weird because his character, I want to believe he's evil because that at least kind of makes sense for his actions, because his character has over and over again been like, I can't be the Lord of Winterfell, I can't be the Lord of anything. Like, he has these powers, but he was only interested in using them to prevent the Long Night, to prevent the Night King from overrunning. He has no interest in human affairs anymore.
But that's the point. Like, the point that Tyrion's making, I'm not saying we have to agree with it or that it's moral, but the point that Tyrion's making is he's not only exceptionally powerful, but he's desireless.
Yeah,
like,
and you
the
can
problem
already see that he's an absentee ruler from like day one.
That's
He's like,
what
all right,
yeah.
later guys.
I feel like if you're
not-
talking about Google being a ruler, like, it almost seems like he's just fine with having the small council led by Tyrion to actually run the kingdom, and he's just gonna go work in Drogon and Volantis for 10 years.
I think you could read that as what greater danger. He doesn't need to be there for the conversation about building the sewers. Anybody could take care of that. He needs to worry about the rogue nuke that's flying around that could take out a whole city. Like, I don't necessarily read that as him being an absentee ruler, as him focusing on the things that are most important and leaving the other business to his small council, which is
fine. I mean, look, you don't want a micromanaging king, right?
Sure.
No one does, right?
Bad boss.
Well,
That's a bad boss.
A lot of times I was going back to what Tywin said to Tommen when Tommen was first going to succeed the throne, where they're having that conversation about what makes a good king, and what they end up coming down to is wisdom, and which Tywin's obviously being very self-serving here, is like the wisdom of listening to your advisors because he's telling Tommen you have to listen to me. But we could sort of read that now as like, well, that's Bran's the ultimate wise king. He's got thousands of years of wisdom through trees.
Yeah, I don't know. The show, it's just kind of a cheat of an ending or like a trick question that they answered, because I think that the whole show, looking back, is a question of can you like maintain your morality while seeking power, and all the different ways that people who are looking for power, whether it's to liberate people or out of duty or love or whatever, all end up failing and all end up hurting other people in that quest. So anyone pursuing power is going to cause more harm than good. And so their answer
Except for
Sansa.
Still saying.
Yeah. Well, let me think about that one more. But their answer to that question, which granted, like, there might not be a real answer in the real world, it might just be the truth that anyone seeking power isn't fit for it, is to have, the magic three-eyed raven do it.
A non-human.
That's not an answer. That's a stopgap until Bran's gone.
Do you think that
because then what happens in
that the wheel has been broken? Like, did that actually end up happening without Dany there?
It got wobbled. It's wobbling.
The wheel's doing this a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like it's wibbling a bit, but it's certainly not broken because there's a power structure that's led by the now leadership of this land, who maybe now that's okay because it's people that are like come from these different backgrounds, have had these different experiences, can add perspective. However, they will have children who will have children, and those children will be entitled assholes, and they will be just like everything that has come before them, right? So no, the wheel hasn't been broken. It's just they're getting a jack. Bran's the jack.
He's a Band-Aid, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, that's not a solve because that's not a human solve.
But isn't the idea now that in theory, it's not going to be a monarchy, that regardless of, obviously, Bran can't have children, but even whoever it is that comes after him, it's also not going to automatically be their child that sits on the throne, or whatever it ends up being, or the werewood tree throne, or whatever the heck it ends up being.
It's going to be...
The wheelchair is going to get passed down from king to king.
Yeah, I thought they were saying, like, no more hereditary succession. It's going to be, then suddenly the king dies, that group gets together, or whoever the main lords of Westeros.
That group isn't going to get along for more than, like, 2 weeks? You think there won't be any blood or politics involved?
I'm not arguing with you guys at all.
That group is going to be dead by the time that Bran,
right. I'm not arguing with you guys
at all.
Nightlands. I don't think they broke the wheel. I think the show is saying that became, even though Daenerys believed it at first, over time it became her excuse to amass greater and greater power. She wasn't going to break the wheel either. She was just going to put herself on top of it. And I think, it's a little bit of a cynical outlook, but I think that's where the show's going. It's like, no, the best thing to do was like, make some moderations to make the wheel more tolerable for everybody.
I think it was the wobble of the wheel, and like it was Sam bringing up democracy was like Back to the Future. Like, you guys aren't ready for that yet,
but your kids are gonna love it.
I also did think that there was a number of moments in this season in which the characters were speaking directly to the audience.
Oh, sure.
And like so many
Davos and Tyrion being like, listen, shut up about zombies.
There's certainly, aside from just me, who had my one shiny moment where I was like, democracy, I told you. Oh, no, never mind. We're not doing that. But there is a segment of the there's a segment of the audience, in addition to myself, that did think that perhaps that was a way that it would go. So like clearly there was just this is the point I want to make with that ultimately, and I've said this before, so forgive me, but like I think for me it's a mischaracterization of what made that first season great and what made the storytelling great to say that it was that anybody could die. It was that it was simply subverting tropes. That's not why it was great. I personally really actively dislike movies that continuously subvert tropes because that becomes very predictable. I know the trope, so I know what you're going to do to subvert it. And it wasn't just like killing people willy-nilly for no good reason, just to shock you. That is also a gimmick. What made it great was that he set up these characters and he set up the circumstances, and the characters were going to behave according to who they are and the world that they're in. And if you were Ned Stark and you made those decisions, we love you and you seem to be the protagonist, but you're going to have to die because you're coming up against this crazy sociopath. and he is now in power, and you have made these decisions, and this is the inevitable outcome. So I don't think that's about foreshadowing. I think it's about setting up circumstances that then play out. It was the same thing with the red wedding. I think it's just a total mischaracterization to say that then at the end we just wanted people to die for their own sake. No, it's that if you set up a circumstance in which they would, then they get out from underneath the dumpster, then you're betraying the value.
They glenned it.
Yeah, then you're betraying the very things that structurally made this world unique and compelling to watch. If people go a certain way because the plot is driving them there and not because they would have done that according to what you have set up, and according to the circumstances around them, that's what's been hard. And I'm not trying to be a hater because I have loved this series and I feel like I've been pretty negative about it, but that's what's been really heartbreaking. No other show was doing that, and I think other ones do now, or very few, I should say.
It's like The Wire
very
with horses.
few. It was The Wire with horses, or Breaking Bad to some degree, right? Yeah, like there are shows that did it, but Game of Thrones was doing it with dragons, man.
And shadow babies.
I love Breaking
Shadow
Bad,
babies.
but Breaking Bad also had like
Sure.
the dynamics that played out over multiple seasons that maybe weren't the most
Some
realistic.
coincidences to get
Sure.
people.
I mean,
Yes,
Hank Schrader
fine,
never was
yes.
on to him.
All right, fine, but eventually.
But you did
Like the third to last episode.
Well, I'm
did
saying he
have
got
a
there.
And it was only because of the book that said HH and that connect, or WW. excuse me.
Hank
Great
also
moment.
wasn't the sharpest.
That's Humbert Humbert.
Yeah.
Walter
More
White.
in the rocks.
Yeah.
Dumb as one.
Holmes, yeah.
You know.
I love Breaking Bad. I'm just
love
going to say,
Breaking
like,
Bad.
every show has its conveniences.
I think Breaking Bad's a really good example of a show doing a really good job of kind of setting up a character's not even turn into evil, because it wasn't just a single turn. It wasn't an emotional outburst by someone on the back of a dragon looking off into a castle that they didn't end up wanting. Like, you saw this general degradation of character and morality from Walter White that we didn't get with Dany, and that's why. I mean, I've gone back. I've looked through the seasons of a lot of people trying to defend it was foreshadowed all along, or back in season 2, I will burn cities to the ground, lay waste to the armies. Fine, but that's not what she did, and there was such a big difference between the people she chose to punish and kill, slaughter, what have you, versus what she did in King's Landing that that just bothered me.
Well, see, I think it was justified and set up, but it all happened in the span of like 2 episodes. Like they killed off like her best friend and Jorah and her dragon and stuff like that. But like that was all so compacted, and you're not even sure how much time has passed between then and when she's at King's Landing. That it's like, whoa, okay. So
you don't get to have what I think. For me, what it boiled down to is you no longer get her, or Cersei, really, like, props to Lena Headey for getting paid so much money to stand on a balcony and drink wine and cut Missandei's head off.
Every cent.
Good for you, girl. And she
cent.
sold
Yeah.
it. Like, it's fine. She did great. She did more with that than Kit Harington did with Jon. But anyway, we didn't get a point of view from Dany anymore. We didn't get a point of view from Cersei anymore. They just like kind of let them go be crazy, and like that's a disservice to those characters.
Yeah.
And we don't even get really a point of view of Jon. We don't get a conversation between Jon and Dany. Even in the throne room, like Emilia Clarke's doing all she can with that speech that they gave her, but it just didn't feel true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we didn't even get to see her we didn't even see her point of view as she was doing that, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's think of the good times.
Sure.
Yeah.
There were good times.
Do you remember Chaos is a Ladder, Chaos is a Pit? Those were good times. Do you remember the conversations between Tyrion and Tywin?
Good
Or between
combos.
Tywin and Arya.
Tywin and Arya. I mean,
So good.
Tywin
I
and
feel like we
anyone.
need like a montage
I think we
right
need-
now.
I think
Like
we-
Salisbury Hill
we just
playing
need
in the
like a
background.
Tywin montage. Like,
all the good moments that we got. Let's
let's
go
look
through
back.
season 2.
Yeah, man.
It's amazing.
So let's talk about some of our favorite moments and characters, most significant character arcs. Was there a character arc that ultimately at the end of this feels like, and they could have died a while ago, they could have died in the finale, that's one of your favorites that still works for you?
Which one?
I don't know, I'm asking you who.
Which one is
You
one of my
get to
favorites?
choose.
Yeah.
Which significant character arc to
Well, this isn't all positive because I don't like how it ended, but over the series, I think that what they did with Jaime Lannister and Brienne was just some of the best storytelling, character-based storytelling on TV, aside from the finale or the last couple episodes, because I just loved. I loved how the show took someone that you were in the world of Game of Thrones. You looked at Jaime Lannister like, who's this rich kid asshole, stabbed the king in the back, and Brienne is this person who awakens him to, or allows the audience to step inside to the truth of that character, which is he's somebody who sees that the world thinks he's an asshole, so he's like, fine, I'll be an asshole. But it turns out that when that the real truth of the matter is, like, he's actually one of the more noble people in Westeros who had the chance to save the entire King's Landing, and he did, even if it meant the death of his reputation and to turn his back and to live in infamy and stuff like that. And I thought that was so beautiful. And then at the end, he's like, I don't give a shit about King's Landing. I'm going to go back to my sister. Whatever. But I think that the way the two of them played off of each other, where she really believed the best in him and was an example herself of like this chivalrous ideal that the entire show kind of undercuts, but she was like, no, this is still real to me, damn it. I'm gonna be this. And that he, for a time, rose to the occasion when he saved her and when he rode off from Cersei. There were so many instances where it seemed like that was his arc, and I loved where it went until it didn't.
Did you like what Bran did with the White Book, with his story?
I did, but it was like, I don't know. When I think about it more, like, she's like, it's like even she knew that it wasn't a good ending to his plotline, so she's like trying to retcon, like, he went back to defend his queen. It's like, no, he went back to pork his sister. This was not a noble act.
Okay, but porking his sister was who Jaime was, you know?
I thought from the very first episode.
Obviously, well, what was great about it was he was a complicated character, and that was that was one side of him, and then there was this other side, and obviously that one won out. But I liked the tension between the two.
I feel like Jamie's the one that I brought up the other day too. He's my favorite because you're saying like he goes back, he saves Brienne from the bear, right? Mm-hmm. But in the same sequence or in the same time period, he's damning the Starks. The Lannisters send their regards. So that's Jaime. That has always been Jaime. He is both those things at once, and I think that was true to the very end of his character. He's not going to stand by and watch thousands of innocents get slaughtered, but there is, particularly when it comes to his family, a ruthlessness about him and a commitment, and a kind of admirable commitment that very few people have for anything that he has for Cersei.
Well, I don't think Jaime knew about the Red Wedding.
When he said the Lannister, I think he absolutely did.
I don't think he did. I thought that was just a Lannister. Okay, I could totally be wrong. I took that as just Roose kind of taking what Jaime said and saying it that way.
I think he absolutely
I
knew.
actually didn't think he did, and it was all kind of orchestrated by Tywin.
But I mean, it was orchestrated by Tywin, but my presumption in that moment was that Jaime did know. He knew exactly what Roose was going to do.
I don't think there was any way that he could have, because he'd been away from King's Landing for so long. Oh, maybe. Okay, but true. But if we did, I mean, we didn't see that scene.
He could have, but we don't know.
We don't know for sure, but that's always been my interpretation, and it's something that I think is great about his character. He is all of that at once, and he always has been.
It totally could be.
What's so interesting to me about Jaime, and it's part of the performance by Nicholas Coster, I don't know, Waldau. Yeah. He's one of the very few characters in all of the show, specifically in like his level of Westeros society, who genuinely feels regret. Like Tyrion and Jaime, they're making difficult decisions. They're reversing. They're going, but just as you were saying, they're sort of conflicted characters. But so many people in Westeros, it's either like, I don't care, I'm self-serving, I do whatever needs to be done, here's what I'm going to do. And whether you're Tywin Lannister or Ned Stark, there's that certainty. But Jaime doesn't have it. He's constantly doing things and then thinking about what he did and feeling the weight of his actions on him. And I think that's what makes him so compelling and so relatable to us.
Do you have a favorite character? This is the Jaime Fest currently.
I know. I was going to say, are we just all talking about Jaime? No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the Hound and the Hound and Arya.
Mm-hmm.
And that one, I don't feel like I have to add the asterisk of it till the end. I really feel like it ended very strong between those two characters. I really liked the Cleganebowl. I thought it was a big, epic send-off for him. And I just love, like, there was that moment where we weren't sure if the Hound was even coming back after his fight with Brienne, and Arya sort of left him for dead. And then when he comes back, it sort of feels like, well, we know there's got to be some payoff coming. And I thought they handled that really well.
I did
like
love
his
the
return
church episode with Ian McShane.
Yeah, Brother Ray, and then him
That's a
joining
nice little
the
bottle
Brotherhood.
episode almost. That was very nice.
This moment, he could have had a totally different life.
And to be fair, I'm not entirely sure that the Cleganebowl isn't just simply a show invention also. Because, I mean, really, again, I know we don't have our bell, but like in the books, I think we leave the Hound as the gravedigger, just with the Septons and such. And I don't think he's motivated as much by revenge in the same way anymore. Like, this is kind of his redemptive arc. But I mean, in the show, like, totally. In the show, again, they fed this to us. Like, you know what's coming for you, big brother. And it's like, oh, cool, we're getting Cleganebowl at some point. And yeah, it was beautiful and epic and ended the only way that it could, which was awesome. But I love the Hound and Arya Roadshow.
Yeah.
If
And,
I'm going to be mad at anything with this season, it's like, why did we not get at least like half an
Some
hour
kind of
more
roadshow.
of them on the freaking road to King's Landing? But okay.
Do you have another character as well that you love?
Yeah,
The arc?
actually, and this is one where I really have to give the showrunners credit because it's not in the book. Is I love Sansa's arc. I love what they did, and Sophie Turner deserves a lot of credit for this as well. But you know what they did with show Sansa, I thought was great, even up to and including the finale, this final season. Even the moment that a lot of people had trouble with, where I think she's talking to the Hound, and he says, you know, you should have come with me, and she's like, oh, maybe who I am today. And a lot of people took that as like a kind of, not definition, but like a defending of, oh, yeah, well, rape is fine as long as I come out strong. And I didn't really see it that way. I saw it as Sansa being very practical about what she had gone through, which I thought was true to her character. And I think I read some feedback from somebody who, you know, is a survivor of terrible things, and their take on it was kind of along those same lines. Like, you kind of had to accept what happened to you, and this is how you're going to present it to people. Obviously, everyone's experience is not the same, but that is what I took for her character, and I thought that was really well done overall for everything that she did have to go through.
I agree. She's one of my favorite character arcs because it's weird. Like, the two that I love as well are Sansa and Cersei, and they're very different because Cersei has remained consistent throughout. And Lena Headey, to her credit, has taken a character who goes through very little change, who is like completely categorically committed to who she is and what she believes in the Lannisters and power, and she never budges, and made that fascinating. And Sansa has had probably the largest change, but at the same time, what's interesting about that is, as a character, she comes in and she's like just an asshole, and a brat, you know, and then by the end, she truly is a leader that you would follow and that you would believe genuinely has the best interests of her people. She stayed consistent to that.
But by the way, like, I do
she
think
wanted
that...
to be, but really, she wanted to be queen at the beginning, and then she was queen at the end.
Yeah.
It was just the journey to get there is where I think that was so excellently done and fascinating, because she had to go through what she had to go through to understand what it even meant to want to be in power. She's the only one that really understands that what it means to be in power is actually incredible sacrifice and responsibility.
Yeah, but I also think that there's maybe a finer line than the show wants to admit between Cersei and Sansa, because I
agreed.
get the sense
totally.
that both of them would let the world burn if it meant protecting the North or their family.
They have their right, but for Cersei, that's a much smaller group of people.
Yeah.
Sansa would let the world burn to protect the North. I agree.
I think if anything, they did a little bit of a disservice to Cersei, because in the last season, maybe even season and a half, because I felt like they really boiled her character down to, oh, well, she's only interesting because she's pregnant.
Yeah.
And oh, she's only going to do these things because she's going to be a mother.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to humanize her, is only the fact that she's going to have another baby, and that's what's, you know, running all of her motivation. I'm like, okay, sure, Cersei, great cheekbones and loves her children. does that really have to become all that her character is? So I wasn't
Michelle,
totally
she has
happy
really
about
pretty
that.
eyes also.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Drinks wine,
green eyes.
drinks wine a
Green
lot,
eyes that Arya did not close
savors her
because
wine.
prophecy and retconning for the sake of retconning. And we're just going to use this line that we came up with and change it around so we can have Arya kill the Night King, but then everything else. God, don't get me started.
I
please.
mentioned this briefly on our last episode. Davos.
Davos.
Only got introduced in season 2, a minor character for a while. He's so self-effacing. He's so humble. It's such a rare thing for the show. And I loved him correcting people's grammar in the finale. Such a nice little button for this character that we met when he was still an illiterate man. One that he still has a wife.
Somewhere.
Right?
Yes, he does.
I really was hoping we would get some indication that he gets to finally go home.
Nope,
He's been away for years and years.
If you're away for that long, it's for a reason.
The guy deserves
He's like, sorry, I gotta go to King's Landing.
give him like 2 months leave. Let him relax.
Yeah,
he's an old
great.
man.
See the John Hughes version
Yes.
of the ending with
I
the
did.
subtitles.
Yeah.
You notice Davos is the only one who gets like a happy ending.
Because he
Yeah,
deserves
it's
it.
great. If you guys haven't seen it by now, like I don't know if it's called John Hughes ending, but it's the one where it's
if
just
you look up
basically
Game
like,
of Thrones, Jon Hughes ending,
yeah,
you'll
with
find
the
it.
everybody wants to rule the world song and everyone freeze frames and does subtitles of where they ended up. Like it's funny.
His
It
wife
does
is
a heart good.
Definitely a pile of onions shaped like Stannis' breath.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
Oh,
yeah.
He learned how to whittle and just everything is like Shireen statues
He had
and
a son
onions.
before the Battle of
He
Blackwater.
did. That didn't go
Mathos,
well.
Matthias?
Mathos, which I only know because I got that trivia question wrong once. Cool.
Oh, trippy. Yeah. Speaking of Blackwater and battles and
so often
moments
am.
in the series, I'm going to ask us 2 questions. One is first to pick out the moments that were the most emotionally painful in the intended way, meaning like they were meant to be wrenching and they really were effective that way, like your most heartbreaking moments, and just some of your favorite, like just small moments from the show.
Well, I've said it before, and I might have to now change my answer, but it was Hodor. It was the explanation of that, but now it's like really messed up that Bran may have done that so that he could be the king. He may have gone back and broken this young boy's mind all to clear the path for him to take the throne. Or
In
if
theory,
that's...
that could be left at the Blood Raven's feet. Possibly. Since
Sure.
Bran hadn't quite gotten to Three-Eyed Raven point
Even if
yet.
it was
but yeah.
manslaughter rather than murder, or whatever you want to call it, then it's still... So much was made mystically of Bran being the one when, what does he do? He sits in the Godswood and is a bait. He's a worm on the end of a fish hook. That said, I thought that was the show at its best when it's like it's answering a question you didn't even know you had, and it just changes the way you look at a character entirely. And yeah, it was definitely the most emotional. It was so sad and so sweet and so touching that that was like the most emotionally hard-hitting one. And then I was trying to think of like what my favorite battle was, because there's so many good ones. Like it's probably Battle of the Bastards, but it's kind of a tie between that and like I loved Hardhome, which is sort of a battle because it just kind of built up. That was when the Night King was like, oh wow, this really is a terrifying existential threat to the world because you have giants on fire, like swinging tree branches, and even they're getting taken down. And just when you saw that wildling and her daughter like turned into a white or
and
rose
then
back up, and and she just gave up at that point. It's like it really brought the horror home of what they were facing. So probably those 2.
Lon?
Oh, I was definitely thinking Oberyn Martell fighting the Mountain. Very shocking moment. They did a really brilliant job of letting you get comfortable with the Red Viper winning before the Mountain manages to reverse it. And I did not see that ending coming at all. It's so gruesome and brutal. And then you just cut to, Ilaria Sand freaking out and then just Tyrion sinking, knowing what's ahead for him. I loved all of that. Another shocking death that I didn't see coming that I thought was handled really well was Littlefinger pushing Lysa Arryn out the moon door at the end of that memorable episode. I loved Littlefinger. I missed him in this final season, I'll admit. I always enjoyed that
The
performance
linchpin
and
for it all.
character.
Yeah.
And that was one element that I had really loved when the show was getting started, and I understand how they sort of played it out, but the Varys versus Littlefinger, like, powers behind the powers, like, the first and second season kind of set up a dynamic where they were really these oppositional forces deep down that were, like, playing everyone against, like, fighting a proxy war with all the lords, and I really liked that. In my dream show, that would have played out more extensively in later seasons rather than kind of being overlooked. And Varys goes overseas, and Littlefinger's got his own sort of schemes working. But yeah, I really felt like both, and Varys too. I liked how both of those characters sort of played out. I really liked that core dynamic early on.
You're gonna love the books.
There you go.
Lon just started reading the books, guys.
I did. I just literally last night. I'm like 30 some pages.
But it's definitely hard to write characters smarter than you are. And I think that Varys and Littlefinger, it's hard to write brilliant schemers when,
if you're not a brilliant schemer.
Yeah.
No, I mean...
Conleth Hill talked a lot, not a lot, but he's mentioned, the actor who plays Varys has mentioned kind of the disappointment in how his character ended up, I think because he had enjoyed playing such a clever character for so long, and then to have it kind of end up not as clever, if I'm being nice, was a little jarring for him.
I think their motivations in those first two seasons, Littlefinger and Varys, were especially just as from the show, were really they were really obfuscated. You didn't know. Did I say that right?
Yeah. There's that one scene Arya overhears them in the first season.
Yes.
And we have no idea what they're really, the substance of what they're talking about.
Right. And so when they're having a conversation, and I hate to keep bringing up Chaos is the Ladder, Chaos is Pit, but they have one of my favorite relationships on the show as well. Certainly that gives you an indication of where they're coming from on an individual basis, and that one is very interested in the idea of things falling apart and what he can gain from that, and the other one is interested in maintaining some kind of structure and order. That starts to give you a hint, but they don't sit there and say that. That's what's so beautiful, is that's poetically up to you to interpret what's now happened, and you don't kind of over time it's revealed that Littlefinger set this whole thing off. And Varys over here has been trying to maintain any kind of order or bring it back. And then that just I did feel like that dropped, but that was a great relationship.
Yeah, I mean, just if I can kind of do a side note here, one of my favorite things now that all the actors are kind of lifted from their gag orders is reading their descriptions of how they interpreted their characters in these final seasons, because, as hard as it has been for us to watch some of these characters do such, for us, crazy turns and maybe unearned moments and stuff, to listen to and to read what the actors had to go through in order to make it work for them and for their performances has been some of my favorite things.
Well, I saw Kit Harington was like, y'all are haters.
Except for him. Except for him.
Screw the haters.
The one thing I did like about Kit Harington, I think that he did mention, which I thought was fun, was that he, although this could be very telling, he apparently didn't read the scripts until he got to the table read, because he wanted to experience all of it with everyone at the table. So that I thought was actually possibly kind of cool, and possibly he just didn't care. But maybe that was just a cool thing.
Isaac Hempstead Wright, I think, either tweeted or posted on Instagram
he also, I liked him too, because he said when he got the scripts that he thought it was a joke, and he thought that the showrunners sent everyone a script saying that they were the king.
Yeah.
And he was just he thought it was just
Marvel,
a total scam.
everyone's getting snapped.
Everyone getting snapped, and especially because they filmed so many endings just to throw off drones and stuff, that I thought that was fun. As far as favorite scenes or moments are concerned, I think both of mine belong to Cersei. One was the Sept of Baelor exploding. That moment to me was amazing for so many reasons. Just visually stunning, shocking as hell. The death of characters that I was invested in Marjorie. I wanted to know what that girl was gonna do, and I know that the actress kind of wanted out. Maybe that was part of why she got blown up. But I wanted to see what was going on with that character, because it did change her so much from the books. And then Tommen committing suicide right after. Basically that whole scene was just incredible and heart-wrenching. And it had been a while since I'd felt something like that, because, spoiled from the books. So, and then the other that I thought was handled very, very well, kind of goes along with the Oberyn thing, was the death of Ilaria. what Cersei decided to do to Ilaria and her daughter because of what they had done to Myrcella. I thought that was poetic. I thought it was like just really good social justice. I thought it was very cruel and very in keeping with her character, and just like something you kind of come back to again and again because it's an ongoing horror that they're doing. It's not just like die and that's it. Like, for all we know,
what if she
Ilaria didn't die? Ilaria didn't die until the Red Keep was caved in.
Or what if she didn't?
Or what if she did? What if she's still there?
Nobody's going down to give her food and water.
Eventually, I know, but that's a horrible way to go.
What if she's still there, guys?
Tyrion just stumbles.
And Septa Unella.
Tyrion just stumbles upon them like, oh my god.
I
Never mind.
I thought as far as revenge goes, that Cersei's on point.
Flair,
What I loved about that sequence was there's this moment where Cersei's talking to her, and she just is talking about Myrcella and what she did and how unnecessary it was, and she breaks. Lena breaks for a second, and she goes, "Why did you do that?" And the pain of it is so raw on her face, and then she snaps the mask back on because she's such an incredible actress, and goes, "It doesn't matter." Because I'm about to kill you so badly, and like it's gonna end so horribly.
I would say just one more quick little moment, because we were talking, not quite bashing, but a little bit of bashing on the finale. One moment I did actually really like was Tyrion saying the brothel and the jackass joke.
Oh yeah,
one more time.
Comedy rule of 3. You had to.
One more time. It
Had
was
to square that
Chekhov's
circle.
joke. It still never gets finished. I believe someone has finished it on the internet, which I liked, but I just as a detail-oriented person, I liked that moment a lot.
The sweetness
The
of it,
realm
yeah.
is so screwed, man.
So realm is so screwed, man.
Oh, man.
I think the Septed Baelor is one of the best sequences on television. That 20 minutes,
Oh, yeah,
the
it's
open,
like the Godfather
yeah, it
ending.
really
It's great.
is. It's amazing. Like the music, the cinematography, like the reveal, the moment, the tension up until the last moment where, you realize you don't know who you're rooting for with that candle. Like, that you should want him to get to it and blow the candle out, and like so that the wildfire won't be ignited. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Lancel
Lancel Lannisters. But you
High
should
Septon needed to
was
go.
horrible. Yeah, right. Like it throws you into this
Sparrow,
total like the High Sparrow. Yeah, like it throws you into this total moral quagmire because you realize you're rooting for the candle and Cersei in that moment, and you're like, oh my god, because all these people are gonna die.
Yeah, I was unabashedly rooting for Cersei.
But you hate
people are gonna die.
Lancel so much, and you hate the High Sparrow
I
so
had no
much.
reservations about rooting
I
for
was fine
Cersei
with
in
it.
that moment.
A lot of people were in there that were
Tyrell's,
the
But
Tyrell.
not
Mace
Elena.
Tyrell.
Yeah, Mace Tyrell.
Yeah.
All right.
Elena was safe back at Highgarden.
You know
fine.
what? We all deserve Bran. That's it. That's what we're learning in this moment. So let's talk about, like, for me, the deaths, because to your point, like, some of the deaths you already know they're going to happen, and they're very heartbreaking, and the performances are beautiful, but these are the things that I feel like I could cry watching again and again and again. Lady getting killed, because I'm such an animal person. When Daenerys has to tie up the dragons, I swear that makes me cry because they feel so betrayed. And the babies, the Baratheon bastards,
Yeah.
and Shireen are the ones that will like wreck me again, and like I'll never not be wrecked by those sequences. But yeah, everybody else can just, I guess, like burn up and blow
I
up
guess
in a
so.
set.
Wow, yeah, you really have a hard cutoff after child.
Just like
Anything
child.
other than
Kids and
Child's an
animals are
animal.
bad.
Yeah.
Anybody
Everyone else
else
can F off to
Anybody
the
else
Nightlands.
just-
It's fine.
yeah.
Whatever.
I guess they're in the Nightlands together, right? Like,
Sure.
is that the deal?
Yeah,
Like, you remember?
they're going along the Great Grass Sea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
something like that.
she turned away from the Iron Throne to embrace Jon, and now she's with Drogo and her son.
Because
That's
she
what
had
I'm
that in
choosing
her
to
vision.
believe.
There you go.
Remember, she
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, maybe I'm dead and I don't even know it." Maybe you are.
Maybe you are. Maybe you died back in season 1.
Do you guys have
Is this
any
a Jacob's
like?
Ladder type?
It totally is. Do you guys have any lingering questions or things
So
that you
many.
want to see?
Oh my
in the
God.
Yeah, so
prequels,
many.
or-
I mean, obviously we were supposed to, but I still really want to know what would have happened if the Night King killed Bran. Like, what actually would have happened? Because it's only expressed metaphorically. It's like, well, like, kill
You
our
lose your
stories and we
stories.
lose our memory. But like, blah, 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 blah. Like, what specifically would have happened?
I imagine everyone becomes a zombie.
That's my
like that's
theory,
but
yeah.
just nothing going on upstairs. But yeah, we're just left to guess.
We're
at that.
just left to completely guess at
The longest
all,
night.
Yeah.
all of the mythology surrounding the Three-Eyed Raven and the Night King and their individual significance. I'm assuming some of this will be part of
Dealt
the
with.
previous prequels where they'll get more into the ancient lore. I would have liked a little bit to square that circle a little bit more. That bugs
liked it
me.
a lot more.
I don't think you want to totally explain everything because then it loses
Yeah.
its magic. And,
Again, I gave up during the long night. I was just like, no,
but
all right,
yeah,
no more
a
magic.
little bit more would have been nice.
Yes.
I guess mine's small. I'd just like to know how Jon went down for the murder of Daenerys if nobody else was there, no witnesses, no body.
He admitted
John's
what
honorable.
He did. Yeah.
He probably said so. He
I bet
probably
he turned
walked out
himself
being
in.
like, what have I done?
Okay, so he admits it to Grey Worm.
Yeah, he
not-
throws
who
himself
doesn't
in the
kill
mercy
him
of the
immediately.
I'm
unholy.
so disappointed in you.
Yeah.
Instead of immediately stabbing him.
I agree. Grey Worm would have definitely killed him right there. It's a convenience because they wanted him to get to walk up into the north and do their ending. But I like that ending for Jon, so I'm not... Like, I preferred the final scene where he and Tormund get to recreate the first scene and go north.
Has a
and
I'm
north.
small
happy.
smile.
I'm happy
Kinda.
Ghost
Yeah.
got a hug.
Yeah, like, that's
It
worth
does
it to
not
me.
excuse what happened at the goodbye, but I'm
Yeah.
happy that Ghost got a hug.
Yeah.
He got a little boop.
He got a nose
got a
boop.
boop.
Yeah.
But
He
also,
got-
I
he
guess
got
we were
some
talking
pets.
about it earlier.
He's a
but
good boy.
Was this all part of Bran's plan all along? You know, was there more going on than he was letting on? Was he the ultimate chaos is a ladder, causing the most chaos so he could take power? That's interesting. I don't think that's what the show gave me, but maybe we should go back and see if there's more signs.
There won't be.
we-
Not for Bran. Not
Yeah,
for Bran.
I mean,
The one real key is that we did see that he had a vision that involved dragons flying over King's Landing and potentially destroying it years before it happened.
But
He was
again,
like,
yeah.
cool.
So it's like,
And
okay,
he
so
never
that means that
warned
he
anybody.
could see the future.
Well,
Like,
I think my take on this is he can see possible. It's like a Doctor Strange
Yeah.
thing. He can see possible futures, but he doesn't know which future will happen until people make the choices that they make and
but he
lead to
seems
it.
to be manipulating choices, and he seems to be
He definitely
manipulating
is.
circumstances.
Yeah,
So
without a doubt.
it's kind of having it no ways and always, right? Like he maybe he is, maybe he isn't. It's
Yeah.
very unclear, and that's interesting. If I really believed the point was like it's up to you to decide what is morally repellent or not. You know, I just don't know that was the point.
Yeah, because I really think his story purpose was just to sort of be an exposition character and kind of a magical MacGuffin of like, we need some kind of counterbalance to the ultimate evil as we have this ultimate good force that the evil is after. Like, I didn't think there was anything more
But
going
he's definitely
on.
not presented as an ultimate good.
Well,
if
whatever,
you
the yin
wanted
to
to
the
make
yang.
Bran like the source of light in the world, you would have depicted him very differently. They're purposefully
like
making
maybe
him...
with a personality.
Well,
Yeah.
they're doing that on purpose. Like, I'm not here to say I know exactly what their purpose was, but it's undeniable that they purposefully made Bran like a weirdo creep. Like,
Yeah, but they
put
also
that
made
in the
it-
show on purpose.
I don't think they did.
I'm not here to say what the
Explain-
ultimate purpose was, but the purpose was there.
No, I'm saying I don't know why you make that character a weirdo creep, but they did. I mean, like, think of the scene with Mira. What's the point of that scene other than to make us not like Bran? Like, there's no other point to that scene.
Right.
Sending Mira away, and then he's like, yeah, I don't care about you anyway, girl who just saved my life 100 times. Like, that's designed to make us as a viewer be like, what's with this guy? There's repeated scenes over the last 2 seasons designed to make us go, Bran's different. I don't know what's going on with Bran. Like, I think you can easily disagree with, like, that as a choice, but it's undeniably a choice. It's not like an accident, like, oops, we forgot to give Bran a personality.
Well, but was the personality that we were missing all along is he's a power-hungry sociopath?
I mean, I think that's possible. I don't think that's what's implied by the show. It's possible.
Yeah.
It's a possible interpretation.
Those are my lingering questions.
That's my biggest lingering question too, which it's not so much a question of like, I don't think the intent was there to make him a lingering sociopath. I just think ultimately everything indicates that he's a sociopath. Like,
If you
he's
take
just
what happened at the end
Yeah.
and trace it back, that kind of is the thing
Did I
that
just
makes the
call him a
most
lingering
sense.
sociopath.
Yeah, it's fine.
Lingering
Yeah.
sociopath. Yeah, sure. It's fine.
You feel
does linger a lot.
He does linger
Yeah.
and lurk.
He
A
lurks.
lurking sociopath.
It's a lurking sociopath.
Yeah. I mean, that is whether like if they did not intend that to be the takeaway, then then that was poorly done, because that is the takeaway for so many people. Is like the only conclusion that you can draw by what he said. Why do you think I've come so far? And all of these machinations
It's not the only conclusion you could draw. Another conclusion you could draw is like he saw things coming together and he knew that they were going to tap him to be king, and that's why he had to come down to King's Landing. Like, that's a perfectly valid explanation.
At what point did he know that they were going to tap him to be king? Like, the moment that he woke up from being the three-eyed raven?
Or he saw it
It's
as one of the 5 things that could happen at that meeting and figured, well, I should be there if that's how they go. I mean, we don't know. Like, we definitely know he sometimes sees how things might play out, but he doesn't want to intervene unless sometimes he does. Like, it's very ambiguous by design.
I'll say it again. I'm fine with him being king because clearly that's what Westeros deserves. It's fine.
Yep.
It's fine.
It's weird, like, we don't look into, like, the assumption is that it was like a mistake instead of that it was a choice that's there to be sort of scrutinized.
I think the reason is that because everything, and I used the analogy the other day about the coffee cup and the water bottle, and that the secret hero is recycling of this entire series. But like, I think that why it's notable is because everything was so meticulously crafted up to this point. And so that if we were to sit here, we would see, you saw the threads of Ned Stark, you saw the threads of the Red Wedding. I mean, we've talked about it all. Like, all of that was there to discern. Once it happened, it felt inevitable. Bran happened and feels random. Not upsetting because I was rooting for somebody else, just random.
Yeah, and like also, it seemed to me like just from music choices and tone that it was supposed to be an unambiguously not happy ending, but not like a dark timeline where it's like, look at the Stark kids. The Stark kids all turned out great.
It's not presented as a dark timeline. It's like bittersweet. It's like we didn't end up with what we thought, but this could potentially be some kind of a new day for Westeros anyway.
Like, it could be something as subtle as just a change in music cue when Bran is like, that's why I came here all along.
Again, you guys are reading that as definitively Bran's evil, and that line is very ambiguous.
Sure.
Like, you could read it in a bunch of different ways. And
But I think that the show wants to read it in a good way. Like, hooray, we've the Starks rule.
I don't think that.
Literally.
I think that there's it's definitely a more open-ended conclusion than like, hooray, Westeros is going to be great now.
Practically they were chucking it up about the brothels where
Here we
everybody
go
burned to
again.
death. They had the
That sequence
book.
is clearly like, we're leaving the stage and life in Westeros is going to continue.
Come on, man. No, Michelle, say a different thing.
Actually, I liked the small. I liked how they left the small council. To be honest, I thought I actually was okay with it. I'm okay with Bronn being there. The only thing I had an issue with was the stupid joke about Tyrion not being in the Song of Ice and Fire, because it is just, there's no earthly reason he wouldn't be in that book, and it was just dumb and jokes for joke's sake, and I hated it. But them talking about brothels, Bronn talking about, arguing about ships with Brienne, I'm fine with it. Like, it's that kind of bickering that's gonna happen on a small
like
council, and that's what we leave them with.
And it ties into what you were actually saying. It's like the boring, mundane business as usual of running the kingdom. Like, it's not this exciting thrill of power day to day. It's like sewers and debates about, should we spend the money on this or that, or where do we get
Don't
it?
underestimate the economy of the brothels in King's Landing.
We definitely need
you want some
a lot of
money.
time on the King's Landing brothels.
You start with those
You guys
brothels.
are making some good points about the
Essential
brothels
services.
and the central services, and you're right. Like, the business of power is
their infrastructure
Asana
week.
tickets
It's fine.
and blue jeans meetings.
Right, exactly, and I think that was the point of that scene, was the mundanity, like, and that's why like Tyrion didn't want this job. It's like bureaucratic and boring.
It felt
What happened to
totally
the Iron Bank?
disjointed.
Right? I was wondering
Somebody
that.
owes the Iron
Who's
Bank
gotta
some
pay them?
cash.
Yeah.
No,
Well, the
the
Lannisters.
But they're all
So
dead.
Well, no,
Yes.
presumably this is now on Tyrion.
Well, that,
Yeah.
no, that was purely with Cersei, I think, in the Crown at that point. I think the Iron Bank's
sure
just going
they'll
to take a
overlook it.
pass on
But
this
will
one.
they take Casterly Rock as collateral? Like,
To be fair, I bet you Bran knows all the dirty secrets of the Iron Bank. So sure, try to get some money out of
it's
him.
like
See what
Deutsche
happens.
Iron Bank.
The Iron Bank one thing that I can feel pretty confident about is the Iron Bank is coming for their money.
Probably.
Like, they're
They do
not.
collect.
They'll come for it.
I mean, I wonder when you hire the Golden Company, do you have to sign anything like if they all get murdered, you owe
some
extra
kind of
money?
cash.
Is there some
Your
kind of
deposit back,
clause?
like,
Jeez, wiped out in like 3 minutes.
If they all die, you
not
get
a
your money
sound
back.
investment.
I truly do wonder how the Dothraki are supposed to integrate
Where are
into
they?
this. So when
Roman.
I watched back, like there's a few of them on the docks as they
Yeah.
like go over to the Unsullied. So I guess the implication is that they're just gonna like be cool in
Get
King's
back on a
Landing.
boat?
No, I think they're supposed to stay.
No.
They're not getting back on a boat. They're
No.
not touching
and
the
they
poison
have no
water.
one to follow.
Yeah, and they're
It's
just
gonna-
they're
they're
just
just gonna kill each
rapers
other.
and screamers and
I feel like a
they're
lot
cool
of them
with
would
this?
probably end up going back to Essos at some point.
It does kind of
Because
bother
they
me.
still got Vias Dothrak back there.
Yeah.
Like that's the
Spin-off
I think
series,
this is their
guys.
new
They
like,
don't
I don't
like
know.
the cold. Maybe they'll go to Dorne.
I mean, but there was also
They should go to Dorne.
they indicated
where I'd
that
go.
the people in the north were not particularly open.
There's no way the Dothraki are settling in the north. I'll
right.
say it right now.
Yeah,
No,
so
no.
like, but
they lose
you
their
have to-
tans. Like it's just no.
it's not their
But you have
climate.
to imagine that's going to be a tough, period of like
Reintegration?
Reintegration.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm at like what are
Hey,
these?
they do not
What
sew.
are we getting, man?
They're just I think
Dorne
they're just going to go
Thrakkies.
south
Right?
and start warring with the new Prince of Dorne that came out of nowhere.
Like what is a small piece of this world that you would like a spin-off series to hone in on? Like
I'm
what's
okay
just-
with Arya. I'll go follow Arya west. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with watching the story of her bringing smallpox to America. It's fine.
I got two. I'd love to see a Faceless Men show, like a bunch of different Faceless Men on different assignments around Bravos, like almost like espionage drama in Westeros. I think that would be super fun, and I'd just like to see more of them. And the Brotherhood Without Banners, like just do a show about the life and times of the Brotherhood Without Banners taking place during Game of Thrones, but just they
Like,
had
to the side.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
had like their whole adventures on their own, like fighting and then going off and becoming the splinter group and fighting, picking off Lannisters, and that'd be super fun.
Just do a sequel. Just pick up where we left off.
Just right there.
Just keep
Yeah,
going. Just keep
God.
King Bran.
You can right some wrongs. You can take your time. You can find people that still think there's stories to tell, and just do 10 episode seasons until people lose interest. If it is a wheel, like let's do another spin.
King's Landing, the new class.
But it's the same case. If we start with that cast of characters who are still surviving, like we all clearly have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Let's just answer those.
All
Roth,
right.
what kind of spinoff do you want?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm much more into the magic and the mythology than I think some. I like the political drama too, so I almost want to like separate those two things a little bit, and then go back to kind of not when the Targaryens were a relatively small house in Volantis before the Doom, and that they were like climbing,
Ooh,
and
that's
that we
cool.
can explore how they did their
So
climbing.
just pre-Aegon, essentially,
Yeah.
before
Pre-Aegon.
they came over to Westeros?
Before they came over, before
I
the
would
dream.
love to see a series about what happened in Valyria.
Yeah.
And what with the Doom.
Yeah,
and everything.
Valyria. Sorry,
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank
I knew
you.
what you meant.
It's like
Valyria,
Krypton, like
so basically,
leading
like
into the Doom.
Yeah.
Valyria before the Doom, and then like
That's cool.
watching the Targaryens be like a very non-important house that is like actively pissed and climbing, and what happens for them in that experience. Because like there's the one theory that they basically caused the Doom, and then they say, oh no, it was a dream, we got out of there just in time. But I think that would be like a fun political drama, but then with dragons. But I still have interest in the children. I know I'm alone
No,
here.
The Long Night.
But the
I
Long
wanna
Night.
see it. Yeah.
I'm just like, what happened there, man?
Well, that's kind of
I
what
want to see
we're
why did they pick this
getting,
one
right?
guy to be the Night King?
Yeah.
What's that story?
Yeah.
I want magic.
Yeah,
I want
what
magic.
You're telling me
I
now,
want
but the
magic.
Age
No,
of
but what you
Heroes-
guys want are explanations for magic, and that's never going to satisfy anyone. You don't want to know, what Han Solo used to be like. You don't want to
What
know
about,
any of these.
definitely
what
don't
about
wanna
the
know that.
sorcerer that was in Varys' trunk, now that Varys is dead, gets out, and he like rebuilds his sorcery life and career afterwards, post Varys?
Starts taking new boys, but just
Well,
like,
just he
don't-
was a not very good red priest. Now he's gonna like redouble his efforts. Like Better Call Saul, but a red priest.
He burns genitals.
Okay, look, prequels almost never work, but you just named a great one, which is Better Call Saul, which is an amazing prequel, and also The Godfather, so it can be done. in The Long Night, too. You just have to be as good as The Godfather 2. That's it. That's all.
And only half of The Godfather.
Yeah.
too.
And only half.
Because the other half is Michael
Well, you
Bates.
could also do the... Anyway, doesn't matter.
Just for the definitive collection, sure. Yeah.
That's if you like dragons, as I do, as I've mentioned that I love dragons, and I really do. You have a video that you should watch that's about dragons that Spencer's going to tell you about right now. It's called Power Levels.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it by now, what are you doing? What channel are we on right now? Fandom Entertainment?
We're on Fandom.
How about over to Screen
Yeah, go
Junkies
there.
and watch Power Levels? We break down dragons with science, as it was always meant to be, and find out which dragon is the strongest, the fastest, the hottest breath.
Yeah.
You can find all of that out because we made a scientist actually figure it out for us.
Yeah, this is a physicist, people, on dragon breath, and this is the definitive answer of the best dragon. Well, at least the strongest.
So yeah, your next argument at your next furry convention, just whip out this video and boom.
Yeah. Go watch
The
that.
terms
Screen
whip out and
Junkies.
furry in the same sentence, man.
Yeah, Power
Bleep it.
Levels.
Yeah.
And you can catch up on all of Watching Thrones right here on Fandom Entertainment if you want to watch us yak.
Yeah,
You can do
what's your
that.
favorite character arc
Yeah.
on Watching Thrones? Let us know.
Mine's Michelle.
Yay!
Yeah.
What a rise.
Spencer
Little
hating
yeah.
magic. That was
Yeah.
a good one.
Yeah, hating Bran and then Bran.
Bran.
Descended
Wow.
to madness.
Great
Yeah.
payoff
Bran
to that
has
one.
caused
Good.
Spencer.
I feel like Lon's transition from the chair to the table has been pretty
I really came
compelling.
into my own.
It was a little
Thank you.
rushed. It was a little like, you
Yeah.
know, a little
I don't
Danny
know.
season 8.
I don't know if it's earned. I don't know if it is.
It's 100% earned, and I have to say,
That's a little
Lon
rushed in this last
was
episode.
hesitant to come on because he thought that we would pick on him. So I just want to say thank you for coming on, and we would never pick on you because we love you and you're brilliant and you had wonderful things to say.
Well, thank you for not picking on me. I
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
it.
Well,
It's been a lot of knockdown, drag out social media arguments this week. And,
Has it?
I'm tired.
I'm staying off.
Yeah, that's advisable.
Not
I
worth it.
recommend everybody watching this right now, just don't talk about Game of Thrones on social media. It's okay.
As Maisie Williams said, I'm just here for the memes.
You know, yeah, you
Just
don't
here for
have
the
to.
memes.
And as Isaac Hempstead Wright said, bye, that was it. KTA, that was the thing.
Yeah.